Hi everyone, and welcome to your second lesson on the geography of medieval Japan, located under the Geography tab of the Japan Under the Shogun Teaching and Learning website resource. In our last lesson, we looked at the key sites and places around medieval Japan. We also learnt about the natural borders that surround Japan, and that Japan is a very mountainous country, so they got most of their food from the sea and they farmed rice. This is just one way Japan's geography affected their society during medieval Japan. In this lesson, we are going to cover the natural resources used by people in Japan, and this lesson also contains activities on the places around medieval Japan to build upon your knowledge from last lesson. So your success criteria for this lesson. So by the end of this lesson, you need to know resources used by people in medieval Japan, and by the end of this lesson, you need to be able to explain how people during medieval Japan use the natural environment. So you can actually complete all of these tasks independently. So let's jump right in. So task 1 is source work on society in medieval Japan and how that society was influenced by their geography. So remember, when doing source work, primary sources are made during the time of study, secondary sources are made after the time of study. So in our study, this unit is on medieval Japan, of course, and this means that the time period we are studying is between 1185 CE to 1868 CE. So it's going to be really important when you're determining whether a source is a primary or secondary source. So let's have a look at source 1. So source 1 is a woodblock painting made in 1834 by Utagawa Hiroshige, and it's called Evening Snow at Kanbara. So number 1, is this source a primary or secondary source? So looking when it was made and seeing it was made during the time of study or after the time of study. Number 2, who made the source? And number 3, when was the source made? You just have to read the description for the answer to those questions, and you'll see those questions are littered throughout not only this lesson, but all other lessons that contain source work. Number 4, what type of weather is in the source? So we can see that it's snowing and it looks quite cold. So what does this say about winters in Japan? So we know that it must snow during winter in Japan, in a lot of places, in most places, and it gets very cold in winter. Number 6, the village in this painting is near a something and a something. So by looking at the source, I can see that there's a mountain in the background. So it's near a mountain range of some sort. There's also quite a lot of trees around. So I can say that this village maybe is near a forest as well. Let's have a look at source 2. So source 2 is a woodblock painting made in 1830 by Katsushika Hokusai called Paddy Fields in Ono, Suruga Province. So number 1, is this source a primary or secondary source? Who made the source and when was the source made? So again, reading the description and then checking whether that source was made during or after the time of study. What type of food is made in the paddy fields? So we know that rice is made in paddy fields. What does this suggest about Japanese food during medieval Japan? So it suggests that, since they used to farm a lot of rice, that a lot of their food and dishes contained rice. Number 6, does Japanese food still have this type of ingredient in it? And think of sushi. So yes, Japanese food still does have quite a lot of rice in it. And number 7, what animal are the men using to move the harvest? So I can see by looking at the source, they're using cows. Or some form of bison, I should say, actually. All right, number 3 is a woodblock painting, a print painting by Katsushika Hokusai in 1830 of women operating a mill near Mount Fuji. So, number 1, is this source a primary or secondary source? Who made the source and when was the source made? So again, looking at the description. Number 4, what is happening in the source? So we can see that the women are using the waterways in Japan and operating a mill. What part of the environment are the women using to help make the food? So they're using a river or a waterway that they've created using the natural geography. And look at the map from the last lesson and what city would these women be from? So we need to look at the evidence in the source. So we can see that Mount Fuji is in the background. We know that that's Mount Fuji because it says it in the source description as well. So I'm just going to scroll up to the map from last lesson. And if we find Mount Fuji on the map, and judging, I know the answer to this photo anyway, but judging from the direction, we know that this must have been taken in Edo. We can also tell that by the year as well. So Edo was the capital of medieval Japan during this time, and a lot of the artwork was made in and around Edo. Source number 4, a painting, I should say a handmade painting made in 1814 by Yukiharu Tashiro depicting the Great Fire of Meriki. So, is this source a primary or secondary source? Who made the source and when was the source made? So again, looking at the description. Where is the fire located in the painting? So it's located in the top right-hand corner of the painting. I think that's really important for people to comprehend before they start engaging with this source a bit more. What does it look like the people in the top part of the painting are doing? So judging by the people in the top part of the painting, they look like they might be samurai or some other form of warrior. So I'm judging they are actually going towards the fire. And then number 6, what do the people in the bottom part of the painting look like they're doing? They look like they're going like away from the fire. The people in Japan depend on the forests for their resources, so wood and food. How would this fire have impacted them? So this fire would have impacted them by depleting their natural resources, so that we know that people in medieval Japan depended quite heavily on the wood and the forests, not only for their food but for their building equipment as well. So this fire would have had a really negative impact on their natural resources. And the last source, source 5, a woodblock painting made in 1812 by Katsushika Hokusai depicting a fish market in medieval Japan. So what made this source a primary source? So a bit of a different question there. So what makes this source a primary source? So it's made in 1812. We know it's a painting, so it's made during the time of study. So it's made during the time of study, so it must be a primary source. Who made the source and when was the source made? Again, that's in the description. And question number 4, we know that fish are an important part of medieval Japanese diet because they could not have any farms due to the amount of mountains there are in Japan. So from looking at the source, what did the fishermen use to catch the fish? So by looking at the source, I can see that the men used like nets that are made out of baskets to catch the fish. Task 2 is Education Perfect. So you've been set a task called Using Natural Resources in Shogunate Japan, and that task should take you around 20 minutes to complete. Task 3 is Comprehension Questions. So answer these questions in your book, and if you can answer these, you're a master at understanding the content from the last 2 lessons. So let's look at the questions together now. So how did Japan's closeness to water influence the people's way of life? So we know that people drew on seafood quite heavily for their diet, so that's one way that their closeness to water influenced the way people lived as well. And we know that they also used mills in their waterways to make their food as well. So how did mountains and bodies of water create natural obstacles for trade and human interaction? So if we scroll all the way back up to our map here, we can see that Japan had natural borders. We can see it in the world map here of the ocean. So not a lot of people could get over to Japan very easily from other societies. And the mountains also made it hard for people to trade, because when people did start coming to Japan, they'd come on the west coast here, but it was quite hard for them to get over to the east coast where all the main action was happening at the time. Just go back down to the questions. Number 3, how did civilizations overcome these obstacles? So, of course, as civilizations advanced over time, they got better at traveling over water and then through mountains as well. Which other countries were accessible for Japan? So we need to go all the way back up to our world map to answer that question here. So we can see China probably had the most interaction. We know that the Mongols tried to invade Japan quite unsuccessfully and famously as well. Name 3 natural resources that came from Japan based on their geography. So you can see, just jotting down those 3 answers in your book. And so name 3 ways the people of Japan depended on the environment to survive. So you can name 3 ways as well, and I'll let you guys answer those questions by yourselves. Task 4 is collecting photographs of the major places in Japan. Now this task should take you a little while. So there's 3 steps to this task. So step 1 is to open this PowerPoint and download a copy for yourself, and I'll show you how to do that now. So I'm just going to open up the PowerPoint. I'm going to click on Settings, and I'm going to click on More. I'm going to go Download as PowerPoint. So that's how you download the PowerPoint. Use the internet to gather 3 photos of each city or place named in the PowerPoint. So you can see there's Honshu, Hokkaido, and you've got all these other places here. You need to collect 3 photos for all of those places. Just using Google Images is fine. And then for each slide, write 1 sentence on what you notice about the natural environment that surrounds the place. So for example, you might notice there are a lot of mountains around Tokyo or lots of forests around Kyoto. That task should take you a little while, as I said. Make sure you get 3 photos for every place or city, and then you have 1 sentence to describe the natural environment in the photos that you've collected. And then lastly, if you click on this picture here, you'll be able to play a Kahoot with your class. So thanks for watching, everyone, and I hope you've learned some valuable content on the geography of medieval Japan and how it influenced the way people in medieval Japan lived. It's always important to begin the study of a society from the past by looking at the way people lived and how the geography where the society arose influenced the way people lived. And if you liked using any of the resources in this website and you want to stay updated on any new websites or any new lessons that are made in existing websites like this one, please make sure you go ahead and subscribe. Thanks, guys.